Alright, let's get this on up there. Alright. Hello everyone and welcome. Today
Bella video.
I'm joined with my sister Lydia. She's back after a 6-month absence or something like that. For those of you that aren't aware, today is the 70th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II being queen. She receives her platinum jubilee today. She probably already got it. But 70 years ago today on February 6th, 1952, King George VI died, which means Elizabeth II has now been queen for 70 years. So, I thought, what a better time to do this now? I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm just now getting into it. I was live streaming earlier this, for those of you that weren't aware, but it didn't work out, so I just had to do this. So, Lydia, what do you have to say?
He's making me do this.
So! We're going to be ranking by a lot of things. Lydia can help out with this. We're going to be ranking on looks. Alright, looks is actually going to play a part. If their painting looks good, we'll rank them a bit higher than usual. What they actually did as king, and did they have a positive or negative impact on the realm, or the country, or kingdom.
Alright, without further ado, let's get into it.
Without further ado, let's go! Alright, so those of you that are wondering where we're going to start off, we're starting off with Alfred the Great. Some people go back to Egbert.
Alright.
We're starting with Alfred the Great. So, it's kind of a misclaim when people want to start. Some people go back to Egbert. Some people start Alfred the Great. Some people start with Athelstan. Others will start with William the Conqueror. I decided to go with Alfred the Great. He was, now, for those of you that don't know, oh yeah, let me go over the tiers real quick. So we have S, A, B, C, D, F, and indecisive. You know how these work. S through F, you know how these work, right, Lydia? What is S tier mean? You've never seen a tier list video.
No.
So S means we're going to be putting them in a tier. So on what, like, if they're really good, they rank higher. Indecisive means like is like a king like Edward V, where they just really didn't get a chance to do anything as king. Edward V, for those of you who don't know, was a 12-year-old kid, and he was usurped by his uncle.
Alrighty, so we're gonna start.
We're starting with Alfred the Great. All right, he was now. For those of you who don't know, Alfred the Great was not king of England. He was king of Wessex, and Wessex was the kingdom. England at the time was divided into several small kingdoms. You had Northumbria, Wessex, Kent, Mercia. There was a ton of different ones, and during that period, they were being attacked a lot by Vikings. All right, so Alfred the Great is a great man. Obviously, there's only been 2 English monarchs that have ever been crowned, are known as the Great. So, Lydia, what do you have to say about this guy right here?
I can't even see it.
The first guy on the list.
I know, but I can't see his painting. You gotta zoom in.
You can't zoom in.
He looks like Papa.
He looks like Ron Schaus. I think that's a good thing, right?
Actually, the next one really looks like Ron.
Edward the Elder.
That one kind of looks like Nana. Just kidding.
So we gotta put. She's actually watching this right now. So here's what we're doing.
How do you know?
She watches all the videos.
Is this a live stream?
No. Oh. So I just said it wasn't. So Alfred the Great was king of Wessex. Now the Anglo-Saxons are going to be kind of hard to rank because I don't know too much about them. He's king from 871 to 899, one of the kings in the early medieval.
Alright, so I'd say the first guy is probably a C.
No, he's not a C. He's better than a C. He was Alfred the Great, Lydia.
Oh, then we'll give
He was a great guy.
A.
He did a good job defending. No, I got more to say about him.
Okay, let me have the mouse.
No, you don't get the mouse because you're just going to throw him in random tiers.
No, I'm not.
So,
yeah, well.
What do you have to say about Alfred the Great?
I don't know.
He did a good job at defending Wessex from Viking attacks that were happening. Because the Vikings, or the Danes as we know them, is what they call themselves. They were basically they would always come into England and attack the kingdom and try to take it over, which they did eventually do, but not during Alfred the Great's reign. And he had like this dream of uniting all of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms at the time, which is what they were, uniting them into one England. And Wessex eventually grew to dominate with his son and his grandson. So I'm going to put Alfred the Great as solid. We should probably put him in an A, honestly, because he was a pretty good king. Right? What do you have to say about his looks? So we're just going to talk about how he looks now. So Lydia can kind of step in, because she doesn't know about much of these guys. So Lydia, what do you say? So his beard looks good. Is he an attractive man?
No.
Does he look like a king?
No.
What does he look like?
He looks like
So you
a
find
wizard.
Alright, a wizard, yeah. Are you fine with a tier for him? I mean, you don't really know much about Alfred the Great.
Yeah.
So he was king of Wessex. So Alfred the Great died in the year 899. He was one of the first Middle Ages kings. So he was followed by his son, who became Edward the Elder. Edward the Elder is the next king on the list. So here he is. So as you can see, the painting is.
He looks like kind of like Pop-Up a little bit.
You say she's gonna say that for everyone, guys.
No, I won't.
Well, half these guys have beards. Beard, mustache, beard.
Okay.
Beard,
Okay.
beard, mustache.
Alright, so this guy ruled through
899 to
899
924.
to 924. I knew that right
What
from
kingdom
the
was he
brain.
king of?
Your mom's.
Camera's probably not getting you in.
There's a camera.
My mom was not alive during Edward the Elder's reign.
There's a camera going. Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, the webcam.
That.
No, back up so I can get you in. You're probably not in. I don't even know what it's getting. So.
Why'd you just turn it?
Because I can see. I don't know if it's getting. Okay, so Edward the Elder, he's also king of Wessex. He was the last king of independent Wessex, and no, I'm not saying a weird word when I say Wessex. Wessex was the kingdom. So it was through Edward the Elder. He worked really hard at getting Alfred the Great, his dream of uniting all the kingdoms. He tried to do that, and during Edward the Elder's reign, Wessex really grew to dominate in England and really started to rule over the place. But it didn't happen with him, though. He looks pretty cool. I think we should probably give Edward the Elder, he's a C tier. He's a C tier guy. Like, he wasn't a bad king, but he wasn't a good king. He was just kind of an average guy. Again, he reigned so long ago, we don't know too much about him. That as much as these newer guys down here.
Alright, here's the next guy.
Alright, the next guy is Athelstan. Lydia said he looks like Jesus. I mean, he kind of does.
That's not a bad thing. Jesus is good.
Yeah, that's true. So, Athelstan is actually generally considered to be the first king of the English. It was during his reign that all the Anglo-Saxons, that Wessex dominated all the other kingdoms and became England. Which these two, Alfred the Great and Edward the Elder, can't say that, but they were kings of Wessex. I think Athelstan started out as king of Wessex, but he eventually turned into England. So he was the first king of England. First Anglo-Saxon king of England. So, he's king, I think, from 924 to when? 930 something, I think. I don't actually know.
938.
It's back on the poster over there. Go see.
What's his name?
Athelstan.
I'll see if I can find it.
He's in the red. We're gonna go see when he died, guys. Okay, hold on.
Which red?
The top, he's up here. Athelstan. 927 to 930. Here's Alfred. 927 to 939.
I was 1 year off.
Oh, she said 938. So he's king for about what? 15 years? That's not bad. But Athelstan does a lot. He's one of the legends out there.
Yeah.
Athelstan. So, what do you give Athelstan? I mean, he was the guy who started England. If it wasn't for Athelstan, England wouldn't even be a thing.
Then I would give him this. You can move it.
I don't know if he's an S.
An A.
Yeah. Athelstan's probably an A.
Alright, for the next guy, he's got a mustache and he's king. I just want to keep my finger on the mouse.
Okay, she can keep hand on the mouse. Just don't do anything.
Okay.
So that was Athelstan.
Yeah.
Next up is Edmund the First. Edmund the First. Obviously, why is he called Edmund the First?
Because he was the first ruler of that name.
Named Edmund.
Yeah.
Edmund the First ruled from. Okay, don't put him in tier yet.
Okay.
Again, these Anglo-Saxons, me and Lydia both don't know too much about them, so we can't really give him a proper ranking. He is king from 939 to 946.
Sorry about the background, guys. We're in the basement.
He's king from 939 to 946. He's king for 7 years.
Okay.
And during that period, I don't really know what Edmund the First does. Obviously, they're still defending from the Vikings, and they do a good job at keeping them out. But I don't really know too much about. I mean, we could probably throw Edmund Or should we do
I
Edmund?
would give him a C.
Probably a C, yeah, too, because we don't really know much about him. He does look pretty nice, though, but I'd say Athelstan looks better than him. Athelstan's probably the best looking so far.
Which one's that again? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he looks like Jesus.
Yeah.
Alright, this next guy looks like a serial killer.
Okay, this is Edred. Edred was king from, I think, 946 to 959, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Edred, for those of you who don't know, Athelstan died without any sons, so the throne then passed to his brother. His brother was,
Talk about this guy.
Edmund. Edmund the First was his. That's Athelstan.
This is Athelstan.
Edmund the First was Athelstan's brother, but Edmund's children are bypassed in the line. It passes to
this guy.
It passes to the third brother. These are all children of Edward the Elder, by the way.
All of him.
It passes to the third brother, Edred, who becomes the next king.
Edred.
And Lydia said he looks like a serial killer. I don't know too much about Edred. Maybe some of you guys can let us know in the comments. I'll be much better with the later kings once we get past William the Conqueror. But Edred, he's like, I don't really have too much to say about Edred. I mean, he looks like he should probably just be a C too. I mean,
a D. Cause his looks
we can't give him a D because we don't know what he did.
You said the looks.
I guess. I mean, he's got blonde hair. I don't really like blonde hair men. I'm just saying. I'm sorry. That was kind of mean. But I just don't.
Okay.
He does have a mustache though, but there's a lot of other kings that have better mustaches than him. So I can't get.
Alright, so
see, I never understood that. Why is his hair blonde but his mustache is brown? Like, what the okay. Next up is Eadwig. So Edred's followed by Eadwig. Eadwig, it's a man.
Oh.
King Eadwig was actually the eldest son of Edmund the First. But as you know, Edmund the First was followed by Edred. Or Edred, and then Eadwig. So it's Edred and then Eadwig. Eadwig was king, I think, from... Was it, what's that? Oh, I gotta go check again.
It was like...
I'm not bad with not giving these dates. Eadwig was king from... No. Edred was king from 946 to 955. Eadwig was king from 955 to 959. So he was only king for about 4 years.
So you heard that now, fool.
So, Eadwig, he is the shortest reign of any monarch so far on the list.
His looks. Are we on to his looks?
Okay, let's just judge these first few on looks here. So this guy, he looks okay.
Okay, this is really mean, but I kind of thought he was a girl at first.
Yeah, he does have long hair.
So I'd give him a D. On looks.
Yeah.
He didn't do much.
D's fine. He was only king for 4 years.
Alright, so we have 2 for 2 for 2, right?
Alright, next up, it's not this guy. They're out of order on the list. Next up is actually Edgar the Peaceful.
I know who it is.
No, it's this guy down
I
here.
know.
This guy. Let me put these in order. Put this guy.
No, this guy.
Who?
Oh, crap.
What are you doing?
This guy.
Well, that's Edward.
He's gonna get an F.
That's Edward the Fourth. I hate him too.
Okay. Alright.
These next ones are gonna be more subjective, more objective opinions. Like I'm actually talking about once we get past William the Conqueror.
You're gonna do my full on slow motion.
Sorry, I can't do that.
Why?
I gotta move these in order. So we get Edgar the Peaceful, and then after him we get who?
No, don't put them in order. Just put them in order as we go. Okay?
Alright, I get the mouse for this one. So Edgar the Peaceful is king from 959 to 975. How many years is that? Did math.
What is it?
959 to 975.
Let's see here.
What do you got? It's 16 years. So he's king for 16 years. So he's obviously one of the ones that has a long reign. Longer reign than most of the other guys. So he's called Edgar the Peaceful because during his reign, the kingdom was peaceful during his reign. And he didn't really so much backlash. So I think for that reason, we should probably give him a B. I think we can go B for Edgar the Peaceful. Plus, he does have a sweet mustache, dude. He looks like a god. Doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Next up is, so he was followed by his son who became Edward the Martyr, and I said Edward the Martyr is one of the few that's not on here. So here's the story with Edward the Martyr. So he's like 13 or 14 years old when he becomes king. I think he's like 13 or 14 when he becomes king in 975. He reigns until 978. He's only king for 3 years. I would have put him in indecisive if he was on the list, but he's not. And then he gets assassinated when he's 14 years old. He's getting off of his horse and he gets stabbed to death. But some guys come up to him. He's 14 years old, so he's literally my age. And he's on the horse and he gets stabbed to death by these guys. But Edward the Martyr's not on here. So the next king was Athelred the Unready, who was king from 975 all the way to 1016. As you can tell, these dates are pretty far back, aren't they? Like, you know, it is 1300s, it was 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So he was king from 975 to 1016. He was during his reign. Or let's start. The thing I don't like about Athelred is that how he came to the throne. He was the younger brother of Edward the Martyr, and he was the guy who ordered the guys to assassinate him. He basically killed his brother just to become king, which that's kind of mean. I mean, he's okay. Athelred the Unready, probably one of the most infamous of the Anglo-Saxons. During his reign, though, the England gets taken over by the Vikings because he loses a battle and gets taken over. I don't know if I'll put him in F. He was king for a long time, though, but still, that was not very good reign. I don't think we're gonna give him an F just yet. I have other kings for F.
D. D.
It's hard. I'm torn between D and F. We'll probably put him in D. The D's getting pretty packed, so I'm gonna stop using D.
How is it getting packed? There's only 3 people in there.
Well, 3 out of. That's a lot. Well, there's. I'm trying to save the S and F tiers. I don't want to use them too much. And a lot of these kings that I know most about. I have a lot of kings in mind that are going to be an F.
The ruler is D. Yeah, right there.
Oh, that's Henry the Sixth. It's not him. Next up is Sven Forkbeard. So as I said earlier, he was actually king from 1014 to 1016. What? So here's what happens.
Bye, guys.
During Athelred the Unready's reign, what is that? What are you doing?
2 hour delay.
Nice.
Party! Party! Party!
Here's what happens. So during Athelred the Unready's reign, as I talked about earlier, the Danes, the Vikings, come in and take him over in 1014 and lose us. And the throne passes to the king of Denmark at the time, the king of the Vikings. The Viking leader at the time is Sven Forkbeard, and this is the guy right here, and he becomes the king for 2 years. But the unique thing is, Athelred doesn't get killed. He stays alive and comes back in 1014. No. Sven Forkbeard takes him over in 1013 and reigns until 1014. And then Athelred comes in and he dies in 1016. So Sven Forkbeard, I'm going to put him in indecisive. Right? He was only king for a few months. He wasn't even king for that long, so you can't really give him. All he did, he did take over Athelred, which is a good thing, because Athelred was a bad king. But they took over Athelred, but he didn't last long, because Athelred took back the throne there. But Sven Forkbeard's son, Canute the Great, was actually pretty good. So after Athelred the Unready, the throne passed to his son. Now, this is a kind of funny story. Remember how we had Edmund the First up here? Yeah. Well, next up is Edmund the Second. Alright, this guy right here. Edmund the Second is a very sad, weird story. I want to put him in indecisive too, and you'll see why, because he was not king for very long. So Athelred dies. The Vikings are very mad that they just lost their king to England, so they try to come back in and take him out. So Athelred's dead. They're like, Athelred's dead now. We now need to make our conquest in and take over England again. So what they do is they come in. Edmund has only been king for a few months. He's taking a crap in the toilet, alright? The Vikings come in and murder him while he's pooping. This is actually a true story. I think it's true. I mean, we don't really know 100%, but it's fun to think it was. So he's on the toilet, taking a dump, and the Vikings break into his room and stab him to death. So Edmund II.
Poop and blood mixed together.
Yeah, probably the reason we haven't had Edmunds since. We only had 2 Edmunds king. So yeah, he's gonna go an indecisive just because he wasn't king for very long. That's the only reason why. Because he wasn't really a bad king because he didn't do anything bad for the kingdom. Well, he did. He took it back to the Vikings. So this guy right here,
Right.
Canute the Great, is the guy who became king. He was the guy.
Oh boy.
He was probably the guy that ordered the assassination on Edmund. But he didn't personally kill him or anything.
Trent, is this guy almost up?
No, we're going in order.
Is he one of the last ones?
No.
Is he coming
He's
up?
like a middle one.
Is he coming up?
We gotta go through all these guys.
Is he coming up soon? Alright, I might leave because I have homework. So.
I get. No. Okay, so here's what happens.
See you guys.
So Canute the Great becomes the king next. Lydia, you gotta finish the Anglo-Saxons.
Give on the pale guy indecisive.
Why indecisive? Indecisive means they didn't do anything. We're giving him an F. Okay, Lydia doesn't like Edward IV apparently. Okay, so alright, Canute the Great. So Canute the Great, he takes over England after Edmund II had been ruling, and then he basically takes it back, and the Vikings, the Danes, now have full control. He's Canute the Great. So he's the only other guy besides Alfred the Great to actually be named the Great, is Canute. So Canute, he rules England for about 30 years. He's king from 1016 to 1035. He's king for 19 years. One of the longest reigns. Canute the Great was able to keep the throne for a while. He was able to keep the English throne for 19 years, which was good. So Canute the Great was actually a pretty good guy. Obviously, I don't know too much about him, but he was the king of the Danes. He was good. He obviously had did he have a positive or negative impact on the kingdom, though, is what I'm saying, because obviously for the Danes it was good, but he had a very extremely negative impact on Edmund, because he didn't really give Edmund a chance. I see that as the Vikings were just trying to get their revenge on Athelred after he died. So now I'm probably gonna have to put Canute the Great. I mean, he wasn't bad. Canute the Great, I'm going to put him in B tier for Canute the Great. He was obviously great, but I think we're going to put him in B. It was a good place for him. He wasn't great, but he wasn't like one of the greats of the greats. Like Alfred the Great was a great king. And then Athelstan. Alfred the Great and Athelstan were so good compared to most of the other Anglo-Saxons. Next up is Harold Harefoot. Harold Harefoot's just a freaking lunatic. I don't really know what his deal was or what he really did. So I'm going to put him in also an indecisive. I think he was only king for 2 years. I want to go check again because I don't know. He's king for 5 years. These next two I'm gonna both put in indecisive. Hartha Canute and Harold Harefoot. So Harold Harefoot's king for about 5 years. He really doesn't do anything. He's kind of just like, well, he did. I mean, I can't really put. He was king for 5 years. I can't really put him in indecisive. I'm not gonna put him in indecisive now I think about it, because I mean, he doesn't really have a major impact on things. But at the same time, he didn't do much of anything. He's kind of another, he was not good. Harold Harefoot was not good. Plus, he looks like a freaking woman. Like, what is going on here? So I'm going to give him a D. I'm not going to give him an F, because I feel like F isn't fair. I feel like I can't safely give any of the Anglo-Saxons an F or an A or an S tier, because I just don't know much enough about them. I might do a video in the future, like a remake of this, once I know more about the Anglo-Saxon kings. But right now, I just don't know too much about them. I just can't give them a fair ranking. Next up is Hartha Canute. So kind of like Canute II. He's king for 2 years from 1040 to 1042. He's the last Viking to rule, or the last Dane to rule over England. Obviously, Canute the Great and what's his name? Harold Harefoot were both Danes, and this was the last Dane. I'm not sure what Harthcanute's relationship. I think he might have been the younger brother of Harold Harefoot. I think Harold Harefoot and Harthcanute were both sons of Canute the Great, but I could be wrong. Oh yeah, by the way, Canute the Great was the son of Sven Forkbeard. Funny enough to make that connection. If you saw the poster video, you should know the relationships. Please find out. So I gotta give. Obviously, he's not a good king at all for England, especially because he's a Danes. Basically, loses the throne of England to the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons take over the Danes. They take the throne back. Edward the Confessor takes it back in 1042. So just because, just the fact that he lost control of England itself just puts him in D. I would put him in F. Harthcanute, I would put him in F, but at the same time I don't know too much about him, so I can't fairly put him in F, so I'm going to put him in a D. And we're going to get a lot of Fs, I think, coming up here. There were a lot of bad kings that England had. And I'm not too harsh of a person, but I won't put them on there. So that was that's Harthcanute. Harold Harefoot and Harthcanute are just really bad, really bad. Edgar the Peaceful, obviously pretty mediocre overall. Edward the Confessor, though. Edward the Confessor is a very interesting guy. So Edward the Confessor was really the last true, technically Harold Godwinson, but he was really the last Anglo-Saxon monarch of England. He was the last guy to hold possession, and he rules for a long time, 1042 to 1066. So Edward the Confessor never has any kids. I think he's a grandson of Edmund Ironside, Edmund II. Where's he at? This guy right here. He's the grandson of him. So, again, he was pretty solid. So here's what happens with him. The story with him is, he takes kingdom in 1042. He takes it back from the Danes. He brings it back to the Anglo-Saxons. However, he was the last Anglo-Saxon king. He brings England back to the Anglo-Saxons. He takes it back. So it used to be ruled by the Danes with these three guys, and then he takes it back to England, which was a good thing to do. So here's what happens. So he never has any sons, Edward the Confessor. So they're wondering who his heir is going to be. They decided to now adopt primogeniture as a thing. So Edward the Confessor, he's got no sons his whole life. I think he has a daughter, but he doesn't have any sons. And obviously back in this time, women can't inherit the throne. So what they do is they get him to assign someone to be his heir because he doesn't have one. So he goes over to this guy named William. He's known as William the Bastard at this time. So he's known as William the Bastard because he was banished from England a while back. He's the Duke of Normandy at this time. His name is William. This guy right here, which we'll get to later known as William the Conqueror, but he's William. So they tell him, you know what? Edward the Confessor, he goes in and he's like, you know what? William, I'll let you be king. You're my cousin. His mother was Emma of Normandy, and she married the Duke of Normandy, who was William the Conqueror's father. Now William at this time, he's like a teenager. I think he's like what, 14 or 15 at this time. So he's like, all right, Edward, it sounds good. I can't wait to be king. So the England flies with that for the next 20 years. He's king for another 24 years. So they just fly with that. You know what? Whenever the Confessor dies, William will become king. We'll all resolve this. But no, it doesn't happen, because when Edward the Confessor, let's just rank him here. He was a saint, one of the few saints. I just feel like he's kind of mediocre overall as a king. I give him a B. I'll give him a B. Anyway, so let's continue this story. I think we'll give Edward the Confessor a B. Plus, he looks pretty cool, so... So, here's what goes on. So, William, he declares William is going to be the king, alright? But here's what happens. Edward the Confessor has a sister. Forgot what her name was. I think her name might have been Margaret or something. He has a sister, and it's her that marries a guy named Harold Godwinson. And Harold Godwinson's there on the deathbed by Edward the Confessor. So Edward the Confessor's on his deathbed. It's January of 1066. Like, January 5th, I think is what it was. I did a thing on it. So it's 1066. He's on his deathbed, about ready to pass away. And so they get him to write an heir. So he basically assigns Harold Godwinson as the king now. He basically points out, Harold, I want you to be king after I die. Alright, I'm gonna die here soon, so you can become king. So Harold Godwinson's alright. I'm the king now. Screw William. He probably forgot. It was so long ago he forgot. He's the Duke of Normandy. No one cares. But what happens is Harold becomes the king. Apparently, like, Edward the Confessor, like, pointed to him, and that was interpreted that he wanted to be the king. At least that's what Harold Godwinson wanted to be the case. So they just flew with that. So there was really no question that William wasn't going to be the king anymore. But, so Harold Godwinson's made the king in 1066. Harold is a piece of crap. I freaking hate him. So for that reason alone, so he becomes king now. Harold's now the king. In 1066, whenever the Confessor dies, he's only king for a few months. So I'm not going to put him in indecisive, obviously, because he has a major, has major impact on things. But what happens? So Harold Godwinson, he's now the king of England. And once William finds out in France, he's like, all right, I'm the king now. Edward the Confessor's dead. Then he realizes that Harold took the crown. He is freaking furious. So what he does, he rallies up all the Normans. So he lives in France, alright? He's down in France at this time. So he has to sail up to the British Isles. So what he does, he rallies up a ton of people battling. Or he rallies up a ton of the Normans, and he's like, alright guys, we're going to come in, we're going to go up to England, and we're going to take out Harold Godwinson and claim the throne, because I am the king. Edward the Confessor promised that I was the king, alright? So this is bullcrap that this guy gets to become king. So he assigned it to this guy last minute. Okay, this is not fair. So he rises him up. He sails up to the British Isles. And what's happening at the time is Harold's the king. He's basically, throughout his entire reign, he's just defending the crown. So what he does is, there's another guy named Edgar the Atheling. And he's already trying to become king up there. It's like a three-way battle for the crown at this time. It's between Harold Godwinson, William the Duke of Normandy, and then Edgar the Atheling. Edgar the Atheling doesn't really have much. So Edgar the Atheling, he's up here in northern England, all right, and Harold Godwinson's up there fighting. Harold wins. I think Edgar gets killed up there, whatever the battle was called. That was that. So. What was I saying? Alright, so he gets killed. So now the morale of Harold's army is like all up now. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to beat everything. So the English army is like, awesome. Right now, we defeat them. So he goes back down to London. On the other hand, while that's happening, William takes advantage of this. He sails up to the British Isles from Normandy. You probably know where Normandy's at. From Normandy. And sails up to the British Isles. This is 1066, by the way. So he goes up, lands on the shore. William makes a strong move because he says we're going to stay right on the shore here. It's not too far from London where they were at too, which is where Harold was going. Harold trained for like a few days after that. It was like 3 days after that Harold went down and they started the battle. So William, he camps, he decides to hold camp on a village called Hastings. He sets camp right there, right by the ocean, so he knows that if something were to go wrong in this battle and I were about to die, we could always sail back to Normandy and then come back and try again. So he makes a good move. So Harold's coming down. He gets the news that the Normans have just settled down in just south of London. So Harold comes in there. It's I swear I can you not. It's like 3 days later. It's like 3 days after this when Harold decides to go and fight William. So he comes down and they all start fighting each other. There's a bloody battle. It's like, you know, your Middle Ages. You got your knights. You got your metal armor with your shields and your swords. It's like, oh yeah. There's a really nice documentary I found, and it's I don't know where it was, but there's a cool documentary I watched on William the Conqueror. Very cool guy. So Harold Godwinson's an F tier for me because he loses England too. So he just I hate Harold Godwinson. He's the only Anglo-Saxon I'm going to put in F. He was just a terrible guy. I do not like Harold Godwinson at all. I think William should have got the throne. Oh, jeez. I feel like I almost threw up there, but I didn't. So it feels like, in my opinion, William was much more close related to Edward the Confessor, because Harold Godwinson was Edward the Confessor's brother-in-law, so he didn't really have a claim. He just kind of did last minute, and I personally don't even think it's not even known if Edward the Confessor really did tell Harold to be king. And Harold had not even really gotten along too well with Edward the Confessor. In fact, on many occasions, he kind of they would have fights over stuff, and it was not good, which is really kind of begs the question: did he really let him be king? Anyway. Back to what's happening in 1066. So he gets so he fights the Battle of Hastings, and Hastings, it's bloody. It's a bloody fight. It's like an all-day fight. It's like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. battle all throughout. And Harold's got the advantage. It seems like Harold's going to win at the beginning. It could have easily gone either way, and Harold made some stupid moves. It seems at the beginning of the war, Harold Godwinson, He's got the high ground at the top, and William the Conqueror, William's got to come up and bring the Normans. He's got to bring them up through of the top. He's got to bring them up the mountain to kill Harold, basically, ultimately kill Harold to become king. So that was what they were doing. And at one point in the battle, William almost gets killed. This guy right here, William the Conqueror. So we're going to move on to him next. So this is William the Conqueror. So at one point in the battle, he gets killed. Or he doesn't get killed. He almost gets killed. Like, he's on his horse. So he's obviously the guy on horseback. One of the English soldiers actually shoots his horse with an arrow, and the horse falls on the ground. He falls off his horse, and the horse is tumbling over him. He's like, boom. It's like the horse is rolling on top of him, which is insane. And William lives. But later in the fight, Harold makes a stupid move. He takes his army down. There's the Norman flank. He flanks down. He tries to push him over to the other side. But what happens? There's a cool simulator. I like it. Look at it. But Harold brings his army down, half his army, which makes him vulnerable. They're now down on the hill, chasing the Normans back. Is what they're trying to do. Try to push him back to France. Or push him back. So what happens is the Normans end up going around this way while they're being chased, and they fight off all the Englishmen. They come in from the side, which was unexpected. They come in from the side, take out all of Harold's forces, and at some point in the battle, one of the Norman soldiers, he shoots Harold, and Harold is killed. This is in September of 1066. Harold's killed in the battle, and then William becomes the new king by right of conquest. So this is what happens. I mean, still to this day, if I wanted to become the king of England, I could literally march in right now with an army in the UK and defeat Elizabeth and with her armies, and I can become king. That's how it works. It's the only way you can receive governmental change. It was a revolution. So William the Conqueror is extremely important to England, because if it wasn't for him, none of these other monarchs would exist. Okay, I don't know why Mary's just chilling down here. We need to move her up to here. There we go. So obviously, William the Conqueror, he's an amazing guy. Now, obviously, you could argue that he is like completely negative impact on Anglo-Saxon England, because he basically ends the Anglo-Saxons once he defeats Harold Godwinson at Hastings. I've rambled up enough about Battle of Hastings. Basically, what you need to know is the battle resulted in Harold getting killed. It was an all-day bloody fight. It was a huge army. There was like 20,000 soldiers, and that's a lot for the Middle Ages. And then William comes in and defeats him. So he was obviously the Duke of Normandy. He's now back in England, and he's the king. He becomes King William I, or William the Conqueror, as we know. So he reigns from 1066 to 1087. So he actually during his rule he rules as the Duke of Normandy and King of England. Though I don't know which title meant more to him. I'm not too sure. It might have been the King of England. I don't know, but I think he liked both. So there was obviously because he splits his realm among his sons later down the line. He has like 4 sons, I think, William the Conqueror. But obviously he does a lot for England, and I mean, I wouldn't say he's a good king. He wasn't a really good king overall, but I think he was a good conqueror, though. And no matter, you could kind of, it's kind of all over the board. I mean, I could see you putting him in S, I could see you putting him in an F tier, because of what he did to Anglo-Saxon England. But whether you admit it or not, what did I just do with him? Whether you admit it or not, without him, England and Britain would not be the place that it is today. Without him, Elizabeth is on the throne today because she's the most senior heir of William the Conqueror. And there's a lot of things in this area that might have been wrong and that could have happened differently. And if anything could have gone wrong, she probably wouldn't be a queen. But ultimately, William the Conqueror is a very important guy. And I think for those reasons alone, he deserves an A tier. William the Conqueror, an amazing guy. I don't think he's an S. Just because he wasn't a very good ruler. There was much better kings out there. But he did reshape the kingdom and reform. And he did a lot of things to set up England for the next few hundred years with his descendants. And he's obviously a descendant of all these guys. He's a descendant of Charlemagne. The first king to be a descendant of Charlemagne. And the royal courts is now French now. So he speaks French. He's not even English anymore. They do eventually get English. I think one of these guys down here is probably the first king to speak English. I don't actually know who it was. I'm going to actually look that up right now, because I don't actually know who the first king to speak English was. I think Harold Godwinson, all those guys spoke English, but William was actually French. Who was the first king of England to speak? Alright. Okay, Henry the Fourth was it. So as you know, William the Conqueror is from Normandy. Normandy was kind of interesting kingdom. So what happens is after him, he's got 4 sons. He's got Robert is his eldest, and there's Richard, then there's William, and then there's Henry. Okay, Henry and William both become kings. So Richard dies, I believe, in the 1070s. So he dies before William does. So Richard doesn't inherit anything. It's the eldest son, Robert. So he divides his realm among his 2 eldest surviving sons. Henry's just the youngest. He doesn't do anything. He will later become king because he's right down here. But this is William. So Robert is the eldest son. He basically takes the title. So he passed the title. He wanted to keep Normandy and England separate because he didn't want them to split apart and go into wars with each other. So what happened was, Robert's the eldest son. Most people think that William was the William II right here is the next king. So, a lot of people think William II was the eldest child of William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror's eldest son was Robert. Okay, Robert gets to inherit the Duke of Normandy. So Robert becomes the Duke of Normandy after William the Conqueror dies, and the King of England passes to his second surviving son, William. It probably would have passed to Richard, but he was dead by that point. So William was king from 1087 to 1100. Now he's kind of a hard one to rank too. He was the son of William the Conqueror. He never has any kids. He's one of the few monarchs that doesn't marry. There was only 4 that didn't marry. It was William II. I think he didn't marry. I could be wrong, but it was William II, Elizabeth I, Edward VI, and Edward V. Those last 2 were kind of givens, but the 2 adults that never married were William II and Elizabeth I. Obviously, so he couldn't have produced heirs. I don't even know if he had any children. I don't think he did have children. I could check this out here, see if he did have children. So I might do some of this stuff. So let's see here. So he was born in 1056. Henry was like completely younger than most of the other brothers. So he had like all these brothers. William had brother. His 2 eldest sons were born like very close to each other, and then William was born a few years later. So he's another one of those guys that is kind of a mystery in how he died. There's a theory that he was murdered, or that he was murdered by, I don't know, but he could have been murdered, but we don't really have good records of that, so you can't really safely say he was. So he's obviously born in France. He's French. And he never had any kids. And he was not. He was pretty cruel to his subjects too. He was not a good king at all. He was a very disrespectful, cruel king. He kind of abused his power a bit, and for those reasons, I think we're gonna probably put him in a D, because I don't think he was a very good king. He was the Duke. His brother. He was king during the First Crusade in Normandy. He did, though, invade Scotland, though, and he did claim it for England for a few years, but he didn't really do much in that. But he's also known as William Rufus, also, and there's really nothing that happened. There's a theory that he was murdered by the subjects of his brother Henry, who becomes king. So it's William II, and he, like the Roman, he wasn't very bonded with the Roman Catholic Church either. He was kind of just a weird guy. I mean, he's not really. Very, very cruel king, for the most part. He was pretty selfish. Pretty selfish ruler, William II. So you then get his brother, Henry I. Now, Henry I is like 12 years younger than William II. So Henry I, he was the youngest son of William the Conqueror. A lot of people don't know that Henry I is actually William the Conqueror's son. And he's the last Norman king of the House of Normandy. There was 3 Norman kings. It was William the Conqueror, William II, and Henry I. Henry I is king from 1100 to 1135. He's king for 35 years, a very long reign, especially for his time. One of the longest. Not as long as Alfred the Great, but he had a long reign, for sure. Now, Henry I, he was a solid. Henry I was solid. He did have kids. He married. I don't remember who he married, but Henry I, he was a good guy. Obviously, what happens is there's a terrible disaster. There's the White Ship disaster that happens in November of 1120 that kills his son and heir, and it really screws him up. After that, he basically falls into a depression after that happens, and he gets really screwed over, and then England's kind of just, they're like, what's going to happen next? So Henry, that's what happens. But overall, he was a pretty good king, especially for the time. Better than a lot of the other previous kings we had. I think I'm going to give Henry I a good B tier, and he looks pretty good too. So he was definitely a big step up from William II, for sure. So you get next up. So he had a daughter, though. A lot of his children were killed in the White Ship disaster, but he has a daughter named Matilda. Okay, she marries Geoffrey Plantagenet, the Count of Anjou, and they got a son named Henry. All right. So Henry I says, you know what, Matilda, I'll let you inherit the throne once I die. But a lot of people, once Henry died, a lot of people did not want there to be a queen at all. They did not like this. Matilda was the reason she wasn't on the white ship is because she was actually living in the Holy Roman Empire at the time. She was married to Henry V of the Holy Roman Empire, so she's often referred to as Empress Matilda. She did actually rule for a little bit, and I don't think they have her on here. They don't have her on here, but she was queen for a little bit. She was just, I'd probably put her in indecisive though if I did have her on there, so it's a good thing she's not on there. But yeah, so here's what happens. So a lot of people don't want a queen. So after Henry I dies in 1135, they basically get this new guy come in, who's a cousin to Matilda. His name is Stephen. Now, King Stephen, I hate Stephen, one of my least favorite kings in English history. His claim to the throne is so stupid. So you say that you want to follow Salic law. I mean, they don't say they want to follow Salic law, but so if Matilda can't inherit the throne, so Stephen's claim is William the Conqueror's got a daughter named Adele. Okay, it's her son is Stephen. She marries Stephen the Count of Blois. So this guy is Stephen of Blois, and he's the only guy in the House of Blois as king. So he's so stupid. I don't even know why this guy's king. And there's basically a war between those two guys. He was king during the first civil war, well, not really the first one, but the first civil war post 1066, post William the Conqueror. And basically the Normans aren't on the throne anymore because Henry I's son. If Henry I's son would have never died in a white ship disaster, it was so ridiculous too. Like, they were just having a drunken party on a ship and it hit some rocks, and then it just completely annihilated. There was like one survivor, I think. It was a gruesome thing. And it's the fact that he got killed in that really just started this. This civil war wasn't even happened. It was the civil war between Matilda and Stephen. But Stephen's claim's so freaking stupid. He was such a stupid guy. I freaking hate Stephen. So for that, I'm putting him in F. I think a lot of people would agree that King Stephen was one of the worst kings. Probably the reason we haven't had a Stephen since. He was a ridiculous guy. I just... Maybe we should probably call him Nathaniel, see what he's up to. Call him Nathaniel.
Calling Nathaniel Bandy.
We might as well see if he answers, because Nathaniel probably gave his opinions on Stephen. Nathaniel knows all these guys.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 93761.
Whoa! Whoa, I just gave away his phone number. Holy crap, I need to not do that. I'm going to text Nathaniel, I'm going to say. Let's see here. Alright, so... Yeah, you get that guy. He's kind of, you know... Stephen... He's just really dumb. So I don't like Stephen. So the Civil War's going on. Matilda does win in 1141. Stephen's king from 1135 to 1154. 19 years we were dealing with Stephen's. I'm reading a book right now called The Plantagenets, and Stephen's in there. He was the last king of Blois. So Stephen's line gets disinherited because what happens is Matilda's got a son named Henry, and Henry tries to conquer Stephen. He's Stephen. He's the son. He's Henry II right here. He becomes Henry II. He is the guy. He basically tries to come in and conquer Stephen. So what happens is, so Matilda's dead. So he comes in. He fails in 1149, but he does get back. So Stephen stays on the throne until he dies. So the Civil War is basically ended. Matilda's on the throne for a few months, and then she takes it back. And then Stephen takes back the throne and reigns till his death, and then Henry fails to do it. He's basically the first king of the House of Plantagenet. Henry II was. Great guy. Henry II was an amazing king. I love Henry II. Big fan. I'm a descendant of Henry II. I'm a descendant of most of these guys. When you get down to it. Let's see here. Yeah, well, Matilda actually was still alive. Never mind, I'm trying to... But yeah, Henry was good. He was the grandson of Henry I. He was named after Henry I. But he was the first king of the House of Plantagenet. He was his father was Geoffrey, the Count of Anjou. So it was... the Plantagenets didn't call themselves the Plantagenets. That was kind of a later thing they put on them. Later title. the only one of those guys that actually considered himself a Plantagenet was Geoffrey, the Count of Anjou. But the reason his father was Count of Anjou, they consider themselves to be called the Angevins, the Angevin kings of England at the times. Basically because the House of Anjou, which was his father and his mother's Matilda. So he is the son of Matilda, so Matilda's line gets inherited now. So Stephen's is disinherited. So no one likes Stephen. The only reason Stephen got to be king is because he was a male, and they wanted that. So Henry II ends up reigning from 1135 or 1154 to 1189. He's a very long reigning king. So yeah, Henry II, he's good. He's good. So he takes throne back from Stephen. He basically, the monarchy gets back on track with his rule, with how the line is inherited. And I'm just so glad Stephen's done by this point. So Henry II, he's got a very long reign, the longest in history, I think, up to that point, if I'm not mistaken. We don't count Athelred already. But the longest post-William the Conqueror reign. Now, Henry II, huge fan. I think I'm going to put him in A. Henry II. I think I'm going to put him in A. So, obviously, he's the son of Geoffrey, the Count of Anjou. Gets that. He has a lot of sons. Let's see here. He was the first Plantagenet, which is extremely important because the Plantagenet was obviously the one in the dynasty in England on the throne the longest. In England, the dynasties are not meant to last very long, as they like in France, where you have the Capets for like 800 years. Nah, England, they don't last very long. The Plantagenets lasted quite a while though for England. He was probably the most prominent house back then. He did end up marrying Eleanor of Aquitaine, though, which was a good marriage. Eleanor was previously married to Louis VII of France, so that was a good marriage on his part. He made good marriages, a good king, good rule. He had a lot of sons. Very powerful too. A lot of his sons were in rebellions against him, which were kind of weird. His sons weren't too big a fan of him, but he was okay. He was a great guy. And there was that whole deal with Thomas Becket and the Archbishop of Canterbury. I'm not going to go into that, but that's just how that is. And he opposed the. He was a good friend of Henry's, but he was not a fan of what happened. So basically, they murdered Thomas Becket. Obviously, that. Let's see here. And a lot of what happened with Henry, though, one of his good things was he married Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was the previous queen consort of France. So basically, Louis VII had divorced Eleanor, and Eleanor remarried to Henry. So I mean, she was married to the King of England and the King of France. That's insane. But by the time that was done, Henry II had ended up ruling most of France at the time. I mean, he led several conquests in France. By that time, Henry II actually ruled more of France than any of the other kings, I think. If you don't count Henry V, one of the most, because he was obviously French, but Henry II, he's such a good guy. He starts the Plantagenets. He makes good marriages. He is a good conqueror. He makes good conquests in France, trying to take him over. He was a great king. All right, we're done with Henry II. That's enough with him. So he was followed by his eldest surviving son. His eldest son was Henry. His name was Henry. He was known as Henry the Young King. Henry the Young King, obviously, what happens with him is he kind of rules alongside Henry II as like a co-ruler. It's a co-monarch with him, but he doesn't really last long. They don't have him on here. So what happens is the throne passes to his eldest son is Richard. Richard is known as Richard the Lionheart by some people. He spends like 10 years. He's king for 10 years, from 1189 to 1189 to 1199. He spends only 6 months in England during his entire reign of 10 years, which is really ridiculous when you think about it. Richard I was not a good king at all. He was a good crusader. He loved fighting so much, and he eventually got killed. He was in France, and he was trying to take over the castle, and there's a French cook that fired all the King Richards died in gruesome ways. 2 of them died in battle. All the King Richards sucked out of the 3 of them. So he gets fired with a crossbow that hits him in the I think it hit him in the chest. It was fired by a French cook on the castle, which is hilarious. He gets killed by a French cook, which is kind of pathetic. Dang, he was a good guy, but I mean, if we're talking king standards, I know we have a lot of D's, but I feel like he's a D also. Richard I. Another thing all the Richards have in common is they don't have sons. None of them ever had any sons that succeeded them. Richard III did have a son, though, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So that's Richard I. I mean, he doesn't really do much, and he was not a good king. He was a good crusader, and there's a lot of movies out there I think that have Richard the Lionheart, and he was obviously killed by a French cook, which was kind of funny. And they ended up skinning the cook alive. It was a pretty brutal fate for that guy. But Richard didn't want anything to happen to the cook, but whatever, they just ended up skinning him alive. It was brutal. So the throne, so we go from bad to worse, okay? Richard I didn't have any kids, so the throne then passed to his youngest son, or not his son, his youngest brother, King John. King John was actually the son of Henry II from earlier. Henry II had 2 kids that became king. His 2 kids were Richard I, and then you had John, King John. King John is king from 1199 to 1216. He was king. Obviously, the major thing people bring up with John is the Magna Carta, obviously. Now, John was so bad. He wanted so much power. He basically almost cost the Plantagenets the throne, and briefly during the end of his reign there, it was not good. He did have 1 son left. By the time John took the throne, though, all of the descendants of Henry II were dead. So by the time he was the last guy from the House of Plantagenet, the Plantagenets were almost done by the time he became king. I mean, he could have easily screwed it up, and he basically did screw it up. John is one of those guys. I mean, he's got to be an F, John, for King John. So the Magna Carta is a document that's signed in 1215 that kind of brings him up, and he has a few kids. I mean, that is designed. It limits the power of the king, so the king no longer can because he was just such a. He looks okay. I mean, he's not even very flattering at him and Stephen. Him and Stephen, they do not look good together. So obviously, yeah, that's John. He sucks. He does have 1 son though. Who becomes Henry III. So, I was gonna say. Briefly, when he dies, the throne goes to France. Comes in and takes him over, and the throne briefly goes to King Louis VIII of France. He becomes king. He's a prince at the time because he was the son of Philippe IV. Philippe II. He was the king. He was actually still alive in 1216 when he took him over. And Louis kind of reigns. Louis VIII is briefly declared king of England for a few months. Obviously, is what happens, but he's never crowned or anything, so they don't have Louis on here. I would have put him in indecisive, but no. So John's followed by his eldest son. He's 9 years old in 1216. He was born in 1207. Henry III. Now Henry III has one of the longest reigns to date, 56 years. He's king from 1216 to 1272. Very long reign for Henry's part. Henry was a good guy. He was king at 9 years old, I'd say, great king. Nicolas, if you're watching this, Nicolas freaking loves Henry III. Major fan of him. Let's call Nicolas here. Call Nicolas.
I don't see a Nicholas in your contacts.
Oh yeah, he's Henry III in my contacts. Call King Henry III.
Calling King Henry III home.
All right, we're calling Henry III, and we're gonna see what his opinion on himself is. All right. Now, I think he was a great king, one of my favorite kings, one of the better kings out there.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice.
Really? Really? He doesn't even answer. Nicholas, come on! You gotta give him an answer. So let's see here. Nicholas. I'm doing the ranking. Monarchs. I need you answer so you can tell people how good Henry III was. Alright, we're gonna answer. Okay. Now we're calling Nicholas, and he's gonna tell us how good Henry III was. Nico! You gotta answer the phone. He loves Henry III. And you know what? On Find a Grave, Henry III's picture. Oh yeah, there's kind of a dispute on what's going on with this painting here. Some people say that's Edward I. Some people say it's Henry III. It's actually unknown who that is. I think it's Henry III though. And on Find a Grave, I'm just saying. I put his picture on there. It's Waluigi Wang. So I'm putting him on there. So he's awesome. So Henry III, I freaking love him. He's got the longest reign. He held the record until 1816. Okay? That is, in its own, is great. So I think Henry III, you know, put him in S. I'm just going to put just for a few seconds, just for like a minute, like 2 minutes. For like 2 minutes. There we go. I gotta get him so he can show him how good Henry II was. He's trying to get sleep right now. He didn't sleep last night. Interesting. Feel like I. He looks so good too. He's got a nice beard going on and things like that. Come on, Nicholas. All right, yeah. So, you know, I'm kind of biased. I think I gotta throw Henry III. Henry III is gonna be our first S. You heard me. Henry III is an S tier. All right. Might disagree, but I think Henry III was a great king. What?
Hi guys.
Leah's back, guys. We gotta call Nicholas.
I finished all my homework. I got a 95.
Put him in S tier.
I had to do 18 problems. Order operations, I think it was. Exponents and stuff.
Nico, I need you.
I missed 18.
I need you to answer.
What's the last one?
I need you to answer. Come on, Nico. I need you to answer the phone.
And Mom said you're in trouble for drinking Mountain Dew on a school night.
Sorry about that. Alright. So Henry III's ass. I just want to see if Nico.
Did you say he's tired?
I need Nico to answer. Nico loves Henry III. Let me answer the phone.
Is Oliver down here?
I don't know where Oliver's at. So that's Henry III. Alright.
Are you allowed to edit this?
I don't know how. So yes, Henry III's a freaking awesome guy. I love him. One of my favorite kings. Obviously, he's a great step up from John. So John, Henry III. Let's read up about him here. So Isabella of Anguleme was his father. He was king of a rebellious nation because a lot of people at the time did not like John, so he kind of restored them. He has a son, obviously, Edward. He helps him with the stuff, with the civil strife. He's got the provisions in Westminster and Oxford were built during his reign. Let's see, I think the St. George's Chapel was built during his reign, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was a good guy. All right, I love Henry III. He's a great king. I love him. One of my favorite kings. So next up is gonna be Edward the First. All right, Edward Longshanks, as he's known. Edward the First was one of the greats. He might be another S, honestly. So here's what he does. I don't know if he's A or S. I gotta give him. He was a great king, though. So he takes the throne in 1272 after Henry III dies. Henry III died in 1272. He reigns from 1272 to 1307. Got it. So that's very long. It's about 45 years. He's known as the Hammer of the Scots and the Conqueror of Wales. He's the first guy to issue hanging, drawing, and quartering as a punishment, which was kind of cool, because that's like, those of you who don't know what hanging and drawing and quartering is, it's basically a 3-step process. They put you up on a ladder. There's a fire down below. There's a ladder up there. They hang you, all right? Then they draw you. Drawing means there's a guy up there with you. He basically stabs in your organs, takes them out of you, basically like shoves them in your face and throws them out. Takes all your organs out, and you're still alive during all this. They take all your organs out, and then they quarter you, which is the worst part. They tie up all your limbs. They have your arms and your legs tied to 4 horses, all right? They pull the reins on the horses, and I guess you're basically suspended. Oh my god, hurts so bad. That's how they kill people. And one of the last guys they did it with William Wallace, and then they did it with the last Welsh Prince of Wales. So he conquers Wales. Edward I brings Wales into England. So I'm going to put him in S. Edward I, he brings Wales into England. So Wales is now part of England, which is a great thing. He conquers them, and then he gets the title Prince of Wales, is now given to the eldest son of the king, and his son Edward II was the first Welsh, or the first English Prince of Wales. And he obviously does that. Edward I, he also ends up conquering Scotland, until it was taken back by John Balliol. But for a few years, he actually leads several conquests in Scotland. Because a lot of the kings were basically going for France, but he went up for Scotland, and he actually conquers all of Scotland for a few years. That's why it's called the Hammer of the Scots, because he conquered them all. So it just he did so much. He accomplished so much. Which is why I gotta give him an S. And now I'm not gonna use S too much anymore. Great guys. Gosh, I gotta give Edward III an S too. Alright, so man, I just like these two. These two are, I'd say, probably the best back-to-back monarchs were these two. Next up is Edward II, basically. Edward IV is called me. Who's Edward IV? My sister wants to know if you're up for a relationship. She's 13. You know, not right now, Reedy Bowling. Alright, so here's what happens. I don't know if this might be split into 2 parts or something. So here's what they do. So Edward II's now king. I mean, he takes the throne in 1307 when his father dies. You know, he's kind of an iffy guy because he was, I think, the only son. I think Edward I had a lot of daughters. He had a lot of illegitimate children and a lot of legitimate daughters. So Edward II was the first Prince of Wales, which is pretty cool. But obviously, that's not going to go in the ranks. I'm not going to give Edward II. I don't hate him as much as most people do. Most people would give Edward II an F tier. I honestly feel bad for the man because he was king for 20 years, from 1307 to 1327, and he literally, no joke, gets deposed by his wife and her lover. So basically, his wife is Isabella of France. She's the daughter of Philippe IV of France. So this is another France comes into play. She basically gets attracted to this guy, and they basically are a little lovey-dovey couple. Huh, coincidence. That's what happens. So they basically decide, you know what? We don't like Edward. Edward's a piece of crap. So we're going to go in and we're going to depose him. So he gets deposed, and then he He dies. So he abdicates because he would have. They were threatening to execute him. So he basically abdicates in 1327. The first English king to abdicate, but he didn't last very long. After that, he died in September of 1327, I think. I don't know if I want to give him a D or a C. I feel like C's too high. I feel like D's too low. And plus, we already have a lot of D's. I think I might give him a C. I mean, he was... F's harsh. For what that man had to go through, I'm putting him in a C. Okay? Very unpopular. A lot of people don't like Edward II, but I'm just saying... He was not bad. I mean, he was a bad... Okay, he was bad. Okay. I just feel so bad for him. Like, imagine that was you. How long have we been filming this, by the way? Let me just do a quick check, because I don't know how long this has been going. I might have to split this in multiple. Oh my god, we're already over an hour in. Okay, you know what? I think I'm gonna maybe... Okay, let this. We'll do Edward. We'll do... Now, I kind of want to start with Edward III, though, next episode, so... That's the first episode. We're not going to get to Elizabeth. We're not going to do the whole thing today. I think I'm going to end it right here because this is just too long. Next, we'll do this. We'll split this into 2 parts. I'm sorry, but that's just how that is. So yeah, sorry I couldn't do that anywhere for that long. But I don't want this video to be like hours long. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you back tomorrow for part 2.